Hi guys, my name is Aiden McConnell. I'm a junior here at the University of Pennsylvania, and of course I'm honored to continue to run for the UA presidency. I'd like to kind of go talk a little bit about what I've learned over the past few days. I've talked to a lot of different groups at this point. Most of the 5 big groups, PRISM, I've been able to talk to several political groups, other affiliated organizations working on mental health. And one of the things that I found consistently over the past few days is that while the UA has been doing a really good job of reaching a lot of administrative concerns and coming up to that bar, it hasn't necessarily been as broad as it possibly could in making sure that student voice is incorporated in many different holistic ways. So for example, in mental health, the body image movement except hasn't necessarily felt as though there's been as much improvement in the discourse toward body image as could possibly be received in the UA. Or for example, something that's really come up in the past few days, financial aid has been almost undiscussed when it comes to the timing and the way that the financial aid system works in relation to monthly bills. So as a result, we have a situation in which, although the UA has drastically improved over the past year, there's still a lot of options to democratize the process, really bring your voice to the table, and then directly incorporate your voice so that you can not just talk to UA members, but also to administrators on a one-on-one basis. How will this happen? Well, one of the things that I'm proposing in my action plan campaign is making sure that student working groups, modeled after Impact Magazine's student solution sessions, can be basically initiated, sponsored by the UA, and then formed through a group of 3 to 4 people, all of which focus on a particular issue, write a white paper, a la SKU's 2015 white paper that came out this year, and then have it submitted directly to administration through some of the meetings that occur with individuals such as the Executive Vice President, Craig Carmarola. So in other words, if you're interested in getting, for example, better representation of colored women in the sexual assault policies, then I would actually love to invite you to create a student working group or student service of some kind that allows individuals to discuss this, bring this directly to the administration, and rather than just having a UA representative speak on your behalf, actually have you in the same room with the UA representative and an administrator that is most relevant to your concerns. That way we can democratize the process and ensure that everybody's voice is heard in the best possible manner. Thank you. Jane?
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming out tonight. I'm Jane, I'm running for president of the UA, I'm a junior in the college, and I'm happy to see some new faces and a lot of people who I have been talking to over this past week, my running mate Ray and I, and really getting student input and peer input about what you guys want to see next year. You know, the reason I'm running for president is because I love and through my time here I've really found a lot of different communities where I felt at home, and I think that's why students go to Penn love it as well. It's these communities, and moving forward as president of UA, I want to strengthen those communities, and I want to make sure that your voice is heard. You know, next year I want to ensure that sexual assault prevention is at the forefront of UA's agenda. This is something that affects all students at every corner of the university. We need to take a proactive stance, and we need to make sure that all students feel safe, that we all feel safe at our home, which is here at Penn. In addition, we need to continue to tackle the issue of mental wellness. This is, again, a multifaceted problem. There's no one solution. The UA is uniquely positioned to bring together many different student groups, diverse perspectives, talk about how mental wellness affects different communities here on campus, and come up with solutions to tackle those individual problems and help those individual communities. You know, this week has been a tough week. It's exhausting, but it's been a lot of fun. And what excites me so much for next year is the ability to continue these conversations, to be an open line, to talk to student groups, to bring your concerns to administrators, and to affect positive change on campus. The passion that I feel, I know made a very effective president, and I hope you're excited next year.
Great, so we have the first question submitted from UA's hearing. The first question is, what specific initiatives do you yourself have to affect the minority community at Penn, and what have you done in the past to impact this community and your role as a UA member?
So Jane, you're first. Just also, both of you, make sure you speak up since it's a little loud in here.
Great. So I'm the current Social Justice Committee Director of the UA. And in that position, my committee and I have been working with a diverse set of groups on campus to improve their experience here at Penn. For instance, in terms of sexual assault, one of the things that I've been working with Jess Smarts with 1 and 4 and with ASAP is bringing together representatives from all different communities, from the 5B communities, from PQ, from Panhandle, to the Penn Violence Prevention Student Advisory Group, bringing them to the table, discussing how can we improve sexual assault prevention policies and programming so that it helps your communities better. So that is one thing that we've been working on in my committee. In addition, something we did was College Day, and in conjunction with UMC, bringing Lee Elementary students to campus, talking to them about why it's important to aspire to higher education and what they can do in high school to assure that they can achieve their goals.
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit about my past experiences and then what I plan to do in the future, learning a lot from it. So there are two main things I worked on. Actually, my sophomore year, I was also on the Social Justice Committee, and my freshman year, I served on its predecessor committee. One of the things that I worked on in addition to the mental health resources guide, which brought in some minority resources as well, was focusing a lot on, again, bringing in and working with Christian Cortez at the time on college days. And so that was something that, again, was almost being piloted as a new initiative at that time, and something that I was very glad to work on, not just for programming from just a general minority perspective, but also a specific reference to the college's ability to interact with the West Philadelphia community and make sure that there was a socioeconomic representation that really played a major difference in how we can change the student composition here at Penn. Second, this year I actually worked with the Budget and Finance Community University trustees on their annual board financial aid policy. And in particular with regards to the financial aid policies that were disproportionately affecting Latino and African American communities in Philadelphia who were sending their children to Penn. I learned, for example, that payday loans, which comprise 80%, things along those lines were very, very important. The one thing I can say in the future is that working to bring people to financial aid concerns with university administration would be something that I'd very much be willing to do and a facilitative component of the UA.
Jane, 30 seconds.
And just looking forward to next year, something that I hope to implement are open expression student liaisons in each academic department. So if you do feel like you're being discriminated against in the classroom for a variety of reasons, you have a student who you can go to express those concerns and who can help guide you in the right direction of how to address that and how to fix that problem and potentially report the situation that has been occurring in the classroom.
Great, next question. What is your experience working with administration, and how do you plan on engaging them more over the next year?
Eden?
Sure. So several different things. I worked with the Department of Public Safety, Maureen Rush, Kathleen Shields Anderson, in the capacity of student safety when it came to fling concerts, when it came to bicycle safety, and also healthcare safety concerns. I worked with student health services in the same capacity. I worked with BPOL and also with Fox Leadership when it came to subsidizing the expenses for MERT. It used to cost $1,000 to be an NT, and now it no longer does, thank you. I've worked with Craig Carnaroli, Executive Vice President, in a current project I'm working on, which is a Rotunda Revitalization Initiative. I've worked with Cruz Prisma. I've worked with Katie Bonner. I have worked with members of the trustees, especially in the Budget and Finance Committee position. I've worked with the Committee on Manufacturing Responsibility. And in all of these different concerns and different scenarios, the way that I propose to continue engaging these administrators and branch it out is to make sure that administrative concerns which are brought to the student body or student concerns brought to administrators have an inherent connection to the overall problem. So for example, bringing the divestment initiatives of fossil fuels to a better connection and more facilitated connection directly with the trustees, again, things like the Committee on Manufacturing Responsibility.
Great. So as a member of cabinet for the past 2 years, part of my responsibilities have been to meet with a variety of administrators, from Val Cade, from Craig Monteroli, to President Gutman, and to make sure that the projects that were going on the Social Justice Committee were being expressed to them and we could get their feedback. In addition, something I'm really proud of are the connections, the long-term connections that I built with some administrators. For example, Glenn Bryan in the Office of Government and Community Affairs, and Jess Mertz, the new sexual assault prevention administrator. Working with them throughout this entire year and building those close connections and being able to see tangible projects come out of those relationships has been very rewarding, and it shows a great example of how maintaining these positive relationships can truly impact the student body. Moving forward, I want to make sure that students who sit on certain committees as appointed by UA and NEC, that student groups know who those representatives are, so that those student groups can reach out to those students so that concerns can go to the administrators.
Eden, 30 seconds.
Sure. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about bringing, again, student concerns directly to administration. So rather than the UA representative solely being an intermediary, the idea of these action groups, working groups, or student solution sessions, bringing your passions and your concerns directly to administration is a way that I propose to work forward when it comes to working with administrators, so that even if you're not necessarily involved in Penn student government, even if you're not involved with the 5 league or steering groups and things along those lines, your voice is still heard in such a way as to directly impact policy making at Penn, and to help the UA really get a more holistic understanding of what it is that we can really help you do.
Just before we move on, try to speak a little bit louder even. The acoustics in here are not very great, so.
Great. So the next question is, how do you plan to encourage collaboration between your members and the wider student leadership community?
Jane?
Great. Well, in terms of the wider student leadership committee, I think there's a lot of potential for inter-branch collaboration in terms of student government. If all 6 branches work towards, one goal, I think that could be really impactful for the student body, because we all kind of have our specialized areas, and working together, we can really reach a lot of students. In addition, steering, as Ray will talk about later, steering is a great place for student leaders to come together to discuss issues, and for those issues then to be brought to the UA body, and encouraging more UA representatives, general representatives, to come to steering meetings to hear the conversations that are being had there.
So a few things. I've already mentioned, again, the working group several times, student solution sessions. That would be a great way for individuals who might not even be necessarily represented in steering to still get their voices heard in an administrative context and UA context. Second thing as well is I'd love to see inter-branch retreat programming. Right now the UA does a lot of retreats and each branch does a separate retreat, but it might be exceptionally helpful to actually have retreats combined with things like SKU, spec, class boards in the UA to make sure that we actually get a better understanding of the friendship, as well as an ability to make sure that policy works. And then last but not least, I would also recommend continued marketing and eventual expansion of the Office of Student Affairs Leadership Retreat. It's a great way for individuals who are both current leaders and upcoming leaders to get directly involved in programming and understanding of cultural competency issues and understanding of PSG overall, etc., to really make sure that they meet each other, understand kind of where the common ground is, and then also generate ideas. I can't tell you how many times I've been in that retreat situation in which I've come away with 3, 4, 5, even 6 new ideas on the basis of observations that I would never otherwise have a chance to meet or a chance to meet. And so as a result, I think that that's something that the UA can help promote a little more to the general student body as well as existing leadership.
Jane, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just want to comment on something that Aiden's been talking about, bringing different students into the fold to work on projects. So the UA already has an existing program, the Associate Membership Program, where students who are interested in a variety of issues can come as unelected members and work on those projects. And those members have become even elected members of the UA and have helped come out with tangible projects that have positively affected the student body. So I think that's a great idea. And in the associate membership program, potentially expanding that, we can improve that experience.
Okay, next question. What is the #1 area that the UA has unsuccessfully advocated for this year, and how would you go about doing it differently?
I would say unequivocally sexual assault prevention programming for athletic groups. I think that that's been one major issue that current sexual assault policies have not yet necessarily addressed, and I did get a chance to speak with Pat today, speak with other students 1 and 4 who have been involved in trying to get athletic administration to come on board with some sexual assault programming. And a lot of what's been happening recently, whether it's through NCAA regulations or administrative backlash, there's been a bit of a difference in circumstance when it comes to, for example, promoting this policy in fraternities versus promoting this policy in athletics. I think that this issue has sort of fallen through the cracks in the more general fold of trying to get advisory board structures up and things along those lines. And while I wouldn't say that the UA has done has ignored this issue altogether, I would say there's a lot more that we could do to put the relevant groups in contact with administrators and athletics, and also provide some lobbying pressure to make sure that those opportunities and those interests do change over the course of the next year.
Jane?
Just to quickly again push back on something that Aiden just said, you did mention Pat Eliana, who's the head of PATH, has been sitting on the Penn Violence Prevention Student Advisory Board and has been involved in creating the Penn Anti-Violence Educators Program. So that athlete perspective has been involved in that particular UA project that will be piloted come fall. I think an area where we can improve also is advocating for students about financial services. So the board was established, but there's yet to be any concrete action that's come out of that board. I think there's been some internal disagreements, and moving forward, I hope to make sure there's a cohesive group that's advocating for, on behalf of 5B communities and the Penn community as a whole.
So just to push back a little bit on what Jane said a little earlier too. A lot of what's been occurring is, although we have some representation that the UA is trying to put on board, some of the programming is not necessarily getting through to administration. So in other words, people are going, and for example, there was a meeting with coaches in January about sexual assault policies in athletics that some coaches embraced, others didn't, and as a result, I see the UAs having the increasing responsibility to make sure that it remains on the radar of coaches rather than sort of falling off on the table. And I think that sets something that, again, is about bringing in as many people as ultimately possible to learn about their experiences, their narratives, their desires, and make sure the UA represents that in the best possible allocation.
Great. So the next question is kind of a follow-up to that. So what has been the most important initiative then that you believe the UA has worked on this year? And going forward, how do you plan to have similar initiatives in your tenure?
Jane?
So I think one of the most important issues UA has worked on, it's truly been collaborative, is the mental wellness guide. It's put together a lot of different resources that students may not otherwise think of as some places to find support on campus, so that in times of distress they can look at it, they can find a safe space to talk to a peer, to talk to a staff member or faculty member, to just improve their mental wellness. Again, we were talking about this multifaceted problem, and I think the UA took a very important step this year in completing that guide to add to the resources that are available for students.
Sure. I would also say that mental health has been a lot of the biggest concerns and the biggest project the UA has worked on this year. This is one of the few projects and few areas in which we're probably all impacted as students, and we all have a direct connection to this issue and this concern. I would say that one of the things that I'm definitely proud of in the UA working out this year, and to commend, is of course outreach to some groups that might not have necessarily been represented just 1 or 2 years before. So for example, a group like Active Minds has been obviously very well associated with the Mental Health Resources Guide, and of course is also looking towards promotion for its event, Inspire. And so where I see the UA going forward on this is, of course, we have a lot of promotional and marketing materials, but also being able to make sure that students are just generally aware of these great events, which include not just things such as counseling, but also yoga, which was piloted this year by a UA member. This Inspire event, which is sort of an artistic representation and an expressive representation of how we're going to go through with becoming a little healthier in our mentality and our mindset. And then lastly, also integrating career counseling into the mental health issue. I know internships can be stressful. I know that the prospect of moving on after graduation can be successful, and I think that's a major area of improvement for further mental health policy.
Jane?
Moving forward into next year on the issue of mental health, I think it's really important to strengthen peer networks and peer support systems. The Penn Benjamin programs, which recently just recruited trainers, is where students are being trained by CAPS to help peers. I think that's an area where the UA can help out and make sure that there's a diverse range of students represented in the trainers there.
Great. So this is the final pre-prepared question. What are some unique and specific ways that you plan to better communicate with the larger student body about the initiatives in the UA?
Great. So one of the things on the campaign plan that Bill Ding and I have is something called Penn Help, which was originally something that was started in 2012, 2013, but at the time it was email. What we'd like to do is expand it to be a chat room service of some kind, utilizing the existing Canvas network, which we also hope to promote as an aspect to add to the Penn mobile app sometime within the next year. What this would basically do would allow individuals, whether it's leadership or whether it's general students, to ask particular questions under relevant tabs. So say you have an interest about Wharton advising. You can go into a particular tab. The UA would facilitate that and actually provide a direct contact to administration, whether it's an email, a phone, etc., and to have that concern directly addressed and facilitated. We think that by integrating it with the Penn mobile app especially, which will hopefully be eventually hosting things such as grades and transcripts, as well as just individual things such as social events, we think that it'll be a much easier way to provide access for the general student body than anything else that a single UA member can do, on the very nature of course, integrating everything in a 21st century mindset and making sure that we have the technological capacity to provide access for all students.
Jane?
So something I'm really passionate about is meeting students where they are. So we're all very busy. A lot of the times, maybe expressing something to the UA kind of falls at the end of your to-do list. Next year, a lot of different groups on campus have outreach directors whose job it is to go to a lot of different GBMs, help with collaborations. Next year, potentially UA members can be responsible for going to different GBMs and talking to specific student groups and liaising with them and bringing those concerns to the UA. I think creating those relationships between a specific member and a specific organization can ensure that there's clear communication and fruitful projects that come out of collaboration between those groups and the UA.
So to clarify something and also address a concern that Jane had raised earlier, the concept of a student solution sessions would be unlike an associate membership category in that rather than having individuals work with the UA for an entire year period, this would be individuals who are solely passionate or interested about an issue-specific solution that they've worked with for maybe a month, 2 or 3 months, and get their direct passion for one particular thing, mental health, financial resources, etc., to administration. I think that's actually an important way to communicate and outreach by bringing in individuals who might not otherwise participate in Penn student government, which I wager is most of the students at Penn, but still have a particular issue that they're so passionate about they love to work with the UA member.
Okay. So now we're going to transition to questions from members here. In the meantime, we have tons of seats up front, so take like a brief pause. If anyone wants to fill in. So the way this is going to be structured is if you have a question you'd like to ask, please raise your hand. Just a couple reminders on questions. Questions need to be neutrally worded and also worded in a way that both candidates can answer them. We'll have the same format that each candidate will respond to each question, and then whoever responds first to each question will then have a 30-second rebuttal period. So we're keeping the same format, and Elizabeth and I reserve the right to strike any questions that don't fit the criteria we've outlined. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Jane and Aiden, raise your hand now, and I'll start keeping a queue. Yeah, so you can get started in the red jacket, and if you have questions like throughout that pop up, just raise your hand, make sure I see you. Go ahead.
So I want to know how you're going to advocate for people whose views you absolutely do not agree with. After all, a student body president should represent all students, not students.
So yeah, Jane, you start first.
Okay. Well, I can actually give you a specific example of where I've advocated for a group I don't necessarily agree with. So I'm the former vice president of Penn Democrats, so obviously my views are opposite to those of Republicans, but in terms of open expression issues, I can see where, regardless of political association, all students should feel comfortable expressing their views. So I've worked with members of college Republicans and Republicans on campus to ensure that their concerns are expressed to the open expression committee. So that's an example of where I've worked with students who are different from me in the past, and I have no doubt that I have the ability to put aside any kind of difference and realize that we are all alike as Penn students and work productively with anyone on this campus next year.
Sure. So one of the things that does always concern me a little bit about the UA presidency is making sure that the politicization of that particular position doesn't necessarily occur. So I think it speaks volumes in the relationship you have between what you do in public and, for example, what happens in the way that you interact with different boards and manage different situations that might not always be the best when it comes to dealing with groups that you might not always see eye to eye on. So, for example, I think it's really important to connect on a personal level. I would say that although I'm opposed to divestment for the fossil fuel issue, we can connect on a frustration over the fact that the trustees don't always have a direct angle to work with the students, and figuring out a way to get the divestment movement to actually be considered by the trustees would be the most productive manner for me to be a representative student and a representative person, relating them on a personal and relating them on a professional level without necessarily all the other aspects of just trying to go for broad political relationships.
And I think in terms of understanding differences, it's really important to sit down and listen and learn about the issues at hand. I think, once you do that in a calm manner, you can understand the other side. You may not agree, but you understand, and you can understand how to advocate for them effectively. And as president, that is what I would do with people with who I disagree.
Super quickly, I know we keep repeating it to you guys, as more people filter in, they can't hear you. And I struck the idea of us using a microphone, so don't make me look dumb. Next question.
So the next person is in the white sweater. Again, we're in the open question part, so if you have questions, please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. So yeah, you can go ahead.
Hi. It seems like over the course of these debates, I've heard two different groups two different groups offering a little opposition to the UA, be it administration or the trustees. As UA president, first as a rep, both of you have served on the UA, so which group have you found to be more difficult to work with, or which one has caused more problems? And what would you do as UA president to better relations with that said group?
Eden?
Sure. So I think it's worth pointing out that the UA is not in any way in opposition to administration or trustees and vice versa. We do have great working relationships. It's just a matter of the fact that Penn is a big place, a lot of different confluences and concerns, and so we have to match all the different policy preferences between different groups and make sure that everybody feels satisfied with the ultimate outcome. So I would say in terms of difficulty, it's not a personal difficulty, but the trustees are just a little less accessible than anybody else on the basis of the fact that, one, most of them only come here once or twice a year, and two, when they do, the decisions are sometimes so broad that the UA doesn't necessarily have a direct way of addressing it. For example, we have a $2.2 million budget and they have a $6 billion operating budget. The best way to address that is motivating students to sit on the budget and finance committee seat and making sure this gets publicized. The NEC does a great job of doing things along those lines. Other Penn student governments could also help out. I would say that one of the groups that's probably been most receptive actually recently, at least in my experience, has been the Department of Public Safety. They're here to basically make sure that we don't get in trouble. And when it comes to playing, when it comes to concerns about student safety and healthy practices, when it comes to fraternity affairs, they're always willing to reach out and they're always willing to collaborate to make sure everybody's voice is heard.
Great. So yeah, in terms of trustees, definitely there is a little less level of access there that does make it difficult to always communicate student ideas and interests to them. In terms of working with administrators, a specific frustration that I do see is that, where students were here for 4 years, sometimes administrators are working on a 10-year time scale in their mind, and it's hard to see immediate action, because to them immediate action may happen in 5 years, and by that time we're 2 years out. So I think it's really important that next year the UA emphasizes, action that we see in our time here, in our years at Penn, and push timelines and keep pressure on, not in a negative way, but in a way that the Ryan said that the student experience is very different than the administrator experience who, may be here for 40 years or so.
So I'd say again, that Jay Myers raised a pretty good concern, which is about time horizons. In particular, what's also hard is making sure that administrative memory actually goes along there too. And so what I would argue is the most important aspect of the UA in terms of its advocacy component is making sure that year after year, if we have projects that we started but never necessarily finished, administration remembers that. And so we can facilitate that through several ways. We can talk to the executive vice president, we can talk to our relative contacts, we can even create databases, which we do, in order to make sure that there's institutional memory on the student side year to year. But it's just making sure that we have a UA president committed to talking about it over and over and over again until the administration ultimately takes it.
In the second row, right?
Hi. So mental health is the forefront of both of your campaign platforms. The wellness guides are already created. The mental health task force has already made a recommendation. What kind of project proposals do you have this upcoming year? How effective do you see them being?
So one thing that I had mentioned is looking into the Penn Benjamins program, which I think is something that's really promising. The UA didn't necessarily have a hand in creating this program, in which captains will train peers to advise other peers and help them through situations, but expanding peer support networks I think is really important and something that's feasible for student groups to advocate for and for us to see change within our time here at Penn. Also, having eye care trainings, having hour-long ones, as we saw in the recommendations from the mental health task force. Right now they're 7 hours long, making sure that they deliver on their 1 hour training promise, I think is really important to make that more accessible for students.
So actually a few days ago I reached out to some groups that have concerns about mental health but might not necessarily have been involved in the original process. So for example, drug and alcohol peer advisors. And looking at the mental health aspects of the reflection of substance abuse and other things at Penn. What they recommended and what I would love to continue to include in other groups that are very focused and very passionate about mental health is getting their input and involvement in creating a fully mandatory curricular infrastructure for NSO to come in each and every year, and making sure that when you have an NSO that incorporates mental health, it focuses not just on, for example, how to go to CAPS or how to make sure how you can basically sustain yourself in the event of an emergency, but also how to practice healthy living habits and healthy eating habits, for example, how to work on body image concerns, and also to know what the resources are from the peer-to-peer level rather than just an administrative level, which is something that, from the feedback of freshmen this year, seems to be a little more lacking than what otherwise have been desired and maybe been initiated last year. And so I think that that's something that the UA could really facilitate to ensure that we get a more holistic approach to mental health. Jane?
Also, I think something that's important to look into is how, different groups, diverse sets of groups are affected by mental health issues. There are some issues that affect women more than men, different minority communities on campus, different religious communities, and addressing those differences and helping come up with solutions for those specific communities in conjunction with the groups that represent those communities, I think can be really impactful in the lives of students.
So, I'm sorry.
No, that's
My bad.
Bill?
Yes, my question is very simple. My name is Bill, and I'm the VP candidate. My question is, how will you bring those people from outside into this room to listen to our conversation? Because the vast majority of people in this room are from steering groups all running for UA. How do you make this debate UA the care of our students?
So I would say, again, two of the things that Bill and I have worked on are the student solution sessions, or the action groups, and again, this Penn Help concern. And so the advantage of having Penn Help is that not only does it provide a UA direct administrative contact and direct contact to individuals who are in the UA, but it also allows other students to fill in for solutions to or suggestions or questions that students have, similar to the way that a chat room service does or the way that a troubleshooting service does for your laptop computer. And so as a result, it not only gets students involved in the UA side, but it also gets them talking to one another. And if it all of a sudden comes out that there's a common concern, be it as simple as whether there's apparently a laundry room epidemic going on with mold, or as broad as financial aid policy, something that students can generate by themselves and also with contact to the UA, and make sure that that's something that's ultimately viable. I would also say, again, getting working groups, getting people out there who are talking about passionate issues or concerned issues, but not necessarily knowing exactly where the direction to go is, would be very important, I would argue, in having a general understanding and the ability to talk to those administrative issues. I think that without that, what's going to end up happening is you continue to have apathy and a lack of an ability to change policy.
Jane?
So I think that the way to engage more students is to really express to them how different projects are relevant in their lives. I think students just don't necessarily realize how impactful a lot of the different things the UA works on are in their everyday lives, and we have to step up our communication with the student body to show them why this specific project impacts your community, impacts your life, and why you should be interested in the work the UA is doing. I think, working with the NEC, whose part of their job is educating the student body about the different branches of student government, what they do is a way to potentially outsource some of that work so the UA can continue to work on these tangible projects, and the NEC can kind of partner with us to let the student body know all the great things that we're working on.
So I would say that communication is part of the solution, but by itself is insufficient. If somebody is informed that there's a UA project going on and that this is how they should feel about it, it's not necessarily going to be as impactful as the simpler thing, which I would argue is get them directly involved, not just in the solution, but in the process to attaining that solution. So the role of the UA president isn't necessarily just to meet with student leaders of relevant groups, but also to meet with the constituents within those groups to make sure that even individuals who are freshmen who don't have any leadership experience whatsoever not only get their voices heard, but actually have the ability to impact policy. So that outreach component is critically important.
In the background in the middle, glasses.
Okay. This may seem pretty trivial, but it offers you an opportunity for a creative solution. The snow day that happened this year, we got interrupted in the middle of the day at around like 1:30 p.m. How would you be able to do that better in the future?
Typically, the UA doesn't necessarily, even when we meet with President Gutman, she just says to us, I have no power over snow days. It's more the Department of Public Safety. There's a lot of different issues involved. Again, I think in terms of communication, so we put it on our Facebook page, maybe encouraging student groups to let students know as quickly as possible that a snow day occurred. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily within the UA's power to change the weather or change exactly who makes the snow day call, but what is in our power is to communicate with the student body. We do have a lot of ways to do that. We have steering here and you know, helping alleviate some of the inconvenience of learning about the fact we have a snow day midday. You know, on the communication front, we can do something.
So yeah, we can't predict or change the weather, but I'd also argue that we can't be defeatist about still talking to administration. We do have kind of what I would argue is a soft power, so not necessarily the ability to change policy, but for example, I talked with Maureen Rush, and I was surveying on the Department of Public Safety Advisory Board last year about regularizing or standardizing the way that the university has a procedure toward winter advisories. And not just in terms of what's already on the ground, but rather maybe what the weathermen are predicting for a particular day, so that maybe in the future we don't run into a situation in which 1:30 in the afternoon we suddenly have a disruption, especially for midterm exams or exams if I recall. And that way it's probably prepared a little more in advance, or alternatively just negotiating and having the administration work with the UA to clarify what their standardized policies are. I think that would be really helpful because like we just had a snow day recently, which I would argue is comparable to the previous one, and yet we still have school. And so just there's a lot of confusion there, and getting somebody like Maureen Rush involved and directly communicative, or Kathleen Shields-Anderson in DPS would be very helpful from a UA perspective, and that's easily something that any regular member of the UA can do.
Yeah, I mean, understanding why DPS does decide to make a snow day call is important, but again, I don't necessarily see, in terms of weather is one of the most unpredictable things at times, and like, I don't necessarily see how the UA can make so much change in that realm, but again, increasing transparency, increasing communication is a way to alleviate stresses of unpredictable weather in students' lives.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions on the queue, and then we're going to cut off questions there for the presidential debate. So the next person is in the black shirt right over there in the back.
Yeah, hi. Can you speak to projects that you completed while on the UA and how you assess the impact that you've made with those projects that you completed, and sort of like not only the impacts but also the steps to make it like a sustainable thing when doing them?
So the project that I'm personally most proud of, just because I think it ultimately impacts the entire student body, at least indirectly, is making sure that individuals who are part of the medical emergency response team can become EMTs without the prohibitive expense of almost $1,000 to get their certification. It seems to me only fair that if you're going to help students basically save themselves, that you should be able to do it without having to pay $1,000 out of your own pocket. So what I did is I worked with Valcade, I worked with the UA, I worked with people and Fox leadership to ensure that there could be a piloted sensitization program in place. And since then, I've been checking in with EMT and also working directly with UA administration currently, like Josh Choco and Joyce Kim, to make sure that that subsidization program occurs and to see what that pilot program ultimately entails. It's been our first year in the pilot program, and so next year I'm hoping to extend that into a fully comprehensive solution, expanding it beyond the current students who are impacted to a general body. I would also say that another particular project that I worked on originally is sophomore year, I actually also on the Social Justice Committee worked on the original mental health resources guide, which Gene did a really good job updating and making good this year as well. And the way that we got impact is directly reaching out to the student groups that we advertised.
Gene?
Great. So something I did bring up before that I'm so proud of is working with Jess Merce, ASAP at 1 and 4 to create the Penn Anti-Violence Educator Program. Next year we're going to be piloting bystander intervention trainings. And that's something so exciting. And part of my platform next year is to see how effective that, at the end of the first semester, how effective was that curriculum, how diverse was our set of trainers, and how can we improve that for years to come at Penn. This is a program that that will be sticking around, so that's really exciting. Again, Wellness Guide is a project that, along with many other members of the UA, I and my committee helped complete, and we're really excited. I talked to Julie from Huck about we're going to be printing them at the end of April to kind of help students who may be feeling final stress. Something else that I'm really proud of is I worked on the Open Expression Committee and making sure that open expression guidelines are now applicable to forms of online communication as well, which was something that was not specified, in university communications on that issue.
Sure. One other thing I'd like to say as well is last year I worked on a bicycle safety ad hoc committee in which we actually revised a lot of bicycle safety policies. We had a lot of concussion cautions and accidents, especially between roads and pedestrians on bicycles, aerial bicycles. And in that particular case, what we did is we worked with the Department of Public Safety and SHS to not just revise guidelines, but also to integrate the Penn Cycle program with the ongoing bike share program throughout all of Philadelphia. And so you asked about follow-up in this particular case, and I'm always big on this, is we actually had to collect hard data from both the city, data that SHS provided, and some data that I also personally invested in. And that's something I think is a great component of UA's research.
So this is the final question for the presidential debate, in the third row in the white sweater.
Me? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Megan from PQ, and I got here like 15 minutes ago, so if this is already asked, like, feel free to jump to another question. But I'm concerned, my question is, like, in your past experiences, either as a member of the UA or just, like, as an individual, what have you done to, like, empower or work with minority communities or specialized communities on campus, and how do you think that this experience will inform your actions going forward?
Yeah, so something in particular that's relevant to PQ as well. So I'm a co-director of the Women's Political League, and I'm really passionate about women, not just in politics, but across campus, feeling confident to step forward and take on leadership positions on campus and beyond. Just helping women through the election process. This process and throughout my time here at Penn has been something I enjoyed immensely, and something I'm really proud of, because I hope that they can in turn mentor future Penn students and others to make sure that there's representative levels of women in leadership here at Penn and in the future. That's something I'm really passionate about. Also, my work with the Social Justice Committee, I have been working with a lot of different 5D groups, for instance, UMC with College Day and the Penn Violence Prevention Student Advisory Board, working with groups from all across campus to make sure that their views are taken into account when we're creating the curriculum in regards to sexual assault policies.
So a few different things I did, especially starting my freshman year, I played a role in founding Global Youth United, which is a group that has both a tutoring component in West Philadelphia, especially for underprivileged schools, as well as a component relating to international issues of intersectionality. So for example, when it comes to women's rights in other nations, so for example in the Middle East, having a general understanding on a high school level even of how minority issues in the United States compare to minority issues in other nations, and what we can do under the Millennium Development Goals or other UN issues to really bridge that gap and make sure that we can internationalize such important issues. This year I've been working on Penn Engage in financial literacy in the Philadelphia community, focusing on both Latinos and African Americans who are effectively necessity entrepreneurs, so individuals who found their own business because they really have nothing else to fall back on and they need some kind of income. And being able to work with them and understand both their economic issues as well as the cultural and underlying structural issues that are kind of keeping them from necessarily obtaining success has been a critical important in how I self-reflect and how I relate to individuals coming from the Philadelphia community into Penn's campus.
30 seconds.
Yeah, so as Aiden just was kind of talking about minority issues, and I think there's an issue for a minority on campus, it's an issue for all Penn students, because we're all here together. I think it's really important that we understand each other. When we had the affirmative reaction panel in the fall that brought together a lot of different students and administrators to understand a specific issue, that's something I hope to continue these important conversations, not just with the groups affected, but with all groups on campus, so that we can all understand each other a little bit more.
So now we're going to move into the closing statement portion. Just a reminder for everyone else, as soon as this ends, we'll have like a couple-minute break, grab some snacks, and then we're going to go right to the vice presidential debate. So the first person to give the opening statement is who gave it? You were first. Okay, so Jane, you're going to go first for closing statement.
Well, guys, we've made it to the end of the third debate. Pretty exciting stuff. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming out and asking questions. Thank you so much for meeting with Ray and I over the past couple of days. This has been an exhausting process, but an invigorating process. I'm more excited and passionate about Penn than ever. I give more of an insight into the needs of student groups and students here on campus, and I have more of a fire within me to make a change next year, my senior year, to make an impact on campus, and to work with students on the UA and across campus to have positive change. This is our home, and I just want to make it the best place that it can be. And I think the platform points that I outlined, in addition to next year working with student groups as issues arise, I think working on all these things together, come this time next year, we can see see a lot of positive change in this campus. It's something I'm so excited about. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me during this week or after in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So I would say if there's anything we can learn a little bit about the campaign, it is just reach out. I would say that yes, we made it this far in the campaign, but it's critically important to note that just because we're campaigning and just because we're reaching out to student groups right now, it doesn't mean we should ever cease reaching out to student groups and making sure that whether it's a UA president or just a UA representative, we are meeting with you, meeting with your concerns. If you're invested or interested in someone who is really looking to make sure that you can maintain a long and stylized solution process to really make sure that each one of your groups ultimately continues to have a voice in the UA, I would say that I am very much committed to making sure that that can happen, rain or shine, regardless of whether or not I win the presidency this Friday. So I would say it's critically important, regardless of who's running, don't politicize the issue. Let's make the campaigns about what ultimately matters to students, and let's make sure that regardless of who wins, everybody involved, everybody who's met with you, and everybody who's come up before you to speak is ultimately invested in you as a person, you as an individual passion, and you as your organizational representative. Thank you guys so much for meeting with me over the past few days. Thank you guys for being such wonderful friends of mine, and I really, really encourage you to vote for your passions and your interests between now and Friday. Thanks, guys.